Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, I'm your humble host, Jazz Morganto, and this is what's next. This was a story that I wanted to do as of yesterday, as of uploading as of yesterday morning, but unfortunately, this story got bigger as the hours passed. Excuse me. This is in regards to Parler. And of course, the big announcement that its CEO, John Matze, was stepping down or fired um, by its company board. This is a uh, one side versus another side. We're going to hear what John Matze had to say in regards to the situation, and then we're going to hear from one of its investors. And I'll let you know who that is in a bit. But here we go. This was posted by Yahoo News, but this was Fox News who broke the story. Parler CEO announces that he's been terminated by the company's board. The free speech social network Parler spiked in popularity last year before losing its ride on Amazon Web Services following the January 6th incident regarding the U.S. Capitol building. According to Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, let me get them in, its CEO John Matze is out, informing staffers in a memo that he had been terminated by board members on the behest of major Republican donor Rebecca Mercer. Now, remember that name, Rebecca Mercer, only because that is a name that's going to come up in a later segment. The app had been a preferred outlet of supporters of the former president, who saw it as an alternative to facing possible moderation. Yeah, Yahoo, moderation. Really? Shadow banning, altering of algorithms, throttling from Facebook, from Twitter, from Instagram. Let's call it what it is. It's called reality. Now it remains offline without any update of whether it is going to resume or not. John Matze was actually looking at different hosts, including one from Russia. So take that from what you will. You may look at yourself and say, hey, I told you it was leftist. Trump, Russia, Parler, Russia, they're all in cahoots. But of course, this is the memo from John Matze, who put this out. Quote, I have worked endless hours and fought constant battles to get the Parler site running. But at this point, the future of Parler is no longer in my hands. Now, this was an ongoing situation because you had roughly 20, I think between 20 and 25 million Parler subscribers, including yours truly, who were part of the site, who liked basically saying, hey, you know what? Here's the stories, here's the memes, here's the posts. We're basically having someone, slap you over the head with fact checkers, fact checker alert, fact checker alert. None of that bullshit and nonsense. But that's what that is. So now we are going to hear from an investor, a key investor, regarding his side of the story. According to this investor, these are the facts regarding the whole situation with John Matze, quote unquote, stepping down or being terminated from Parler.
Rarely in my life have I felt more betrayed and sold out than yesterday. May ask, what are you talking about? What's going on? Well, there was a story about Parler, which I am, of course, an investor in and have had a role in some of the operations and management of the company. Well, the story about the Parler CEO being terminated, and he decided to give a couple interviews to the press that were entirely inaccurate. It's unfortunate. We don't have time for these fights right now. This is about free speech, tech tyranny, and more. And this internal fighting is totally unnecessary. And let me just say in advance, I recognize that. But the record needs to be corrected and the truth matters. And none of this was ever going to be easy. And no, I'm not giving up. So I'll correct the record today and give you the real story about what's happening behind the scenes at Parler and why I've been noticeably silent about it for a month, unlike our former CEO. This will be interesting. Today's show, so we've got that. I've got the real Parler story and the absolute betrayal. I'm telling you, I've never felt this screwed over. Pardon me, I can't think of a cuter term to take the edge off it than I did yesterday. Screwed over by the former CEO. Well, Mr. Matze decided it would be a good idea to go out and give a bunch of media interviews. And unfortunately, in those media interviews, he decided to spin a yarn, a fairy tale that is 100% inaccurate. Folks, have I ever spun your wheels on this show? Have I ever BS'd you? Have I ever lied to you? Why do you think I'm involved with Parler? Seriously, I want to throw that out there for, people who are regular listeners and liberals who will plug into my show today for the first time trying to get the real scoop on why the Parler CEO was fired. Why do you think I'm involved with Parler? How much money do you think I've taken from Parler in the year I've been involved? It's a question. The answer is zero, not a dime. How much money have I invested to be involved with Parler? A lot. So I'm negative a lot of money, have made nothing from the company yet. I invested in it. Why? Because if you're a regular listener to the show for the 6-7 years we've been in the digital space with the Dan Bongino show, you know that what I've fought for and advocated for always has been a parallel economy where conservatives, libertarians, and anyone who loves liberty and freedom can go free of cancel culture. And I felt from basically January on, when I thought I could help Parler, that Parler would be one of those vehicles for you to escape the censorship of Twitter. Now, someone should ask Mr. Matze how much money he's made from Parler, because I'd be interested in knowing that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you the real story, and then I'm going to provide a handy media guide to actual reporters, again, not the liberal media fake news, but actual reporters who, if they interview Mr. Matze, maybe some questions you'd like to ask, considering he seems to be like Teddy Ruxpin lately, and put a quarter in him, he'll tell you any story you want. I busted my butt for a year, despite a lot of personal challenges in my life, not just me, but my wife as well, to take this company in January, Parler, when I got on board with them, to take it from 500,000 users and being a relatively anonymous company very few people knew about, to 21 million users and the number one spot in the App Store before we were brutally attacked by the leftist tyrants. That's not me patting myself on the back. I'm not interested in that. That's me telling you the truth. That was the result of my hard work, along with the hard work of many others. So John, the former CEO, decided to give a bunch of interviews where he claimed two conflicting things. He said he was terminated yesterday. Today's Thursday when you're hearing this show. So yesterday and Wednesday, he told a bunch of people, I believe it was at Fox and other outlets, that he was fired because he had a free speech vision for Parler and that he was meeting resistance at every turn. He had a free speech vision. That's fascinating. Because if we do facts, which is what I do on this show, and again, I have no motivation. I haven't made $1 from this company, not $1. If he had a free speech vision for the company and met resistance, and by the way, there were only 4 owners of Parler, John, me, Jeff, and Rebecca Mercer. Those are the 4 owners. That's really weird because his story today, Thursday morning, in an interview with the New York Times, is the exact opposite. Yesterday, he said he was some big free speech advocate, insinuating he wanted light moderation for the site, which was the right way to handle Parler, by the way. We are a free speech site. But today he said something different. He said that in the New York Times, which is really weird, in an interview today, that he got fired because he wanted to moderate basically heavily and get rid of QAnon and terrorists and all that stuff. Which, by the way, nobody allows terrorists on their site, so it's kind of a stupid thing to say. Like, is there a terrorist site out there? I'm not really sure. That may be other social media platforms. That wasn't us. So it's weird. Yesterday, he was anti-moderation, but this morning, he was pro-moderation. Why do you think he changed his story if he's telling you the truth? Because I'm getting a lot of emails from listeners. We leave our email out there because I love my audience, and I actually want to hear from you, not through filters. So we get your emails. John emailed me yesterday, another John, JG, even a guy who doesn't like us. This guy, Chris, sends me nasty emails all the time. It's okay. I enjoy hearing what you're thinking. And they said, gosh, this guy, John, sounds so sincere. It sounds like the big guys ganged up on him. Did they? Did they really? So why isn't his story consistent from one day to the next? Yesterday, he wanted Parler to be a free speech site. Today, he's saying he got fired because he didn't want it to be a free speech site. Gosh, what story's true? Well, why did he change his mind about his story, which seems to change as he licks his finger and sees which direction the winds are blowing? Well, because yesterday I did a Facebook Live, which in the beginning of the show was appearing on Fox News. That's why Paula was doing, I thought she was clearing her throat. She's trying to get me to watch the TV. They covered the Facebook Live. I did a Facebook Live yesterday, Wednesday evening, to correct the record about John's termination as the Parler CEO, where I addressed the facts. And the facts are this. John's story about wanting to be some free speech advocate for Parler is inaccurate and is absolutely false. So I'll give you the media guide in a second, maybe some questions you should ask John if you're in the media, just to challenge him on his story yesterday, because it's changed today, that he was advocating for a free speech site. And let me get this straight, folks. You've known me now for what, 6, 7 years, many of you? And I was the advocate to make Parler what, an anti-free speech site? Does that make sense to you? Does that make any sense to you as listeners of mine who've been involved with me forever? Since the book one genesis of this show, you really believe it was me saying, no, let's make this site more like Twitter? That makes sense? And John Matze was on the side of free speech while I wasn't. That makes sense. This is not the show. If you actually believe that, trust me, this is not the show for you. The reason he changed his story is because last night during my Facebook Live that went viral, I had to do an emergency press conference about it. I laid down a bunch of facts, and I told you that because of some legal reasons, we have to be careful, but when the real story comes out about who was committed to free speech and who wasn't, I promise you, Mr. Matze was not on the right side of that argument. So he changed his story today to kiss up to the Silicon Valley people and others. I don't know what his motivations are. I don't care to get in his head, but to try to say, no, I was against those free QAnon folks and everything. Well, I was against them the whole time. Weird how his story changed from one day to the next. You doubt me? Fair enough. You should. You should doubt everything. Fact check me too. You doubt my story that me and the 2 other owners were absolutely on the side of free speech for the site? And Mr. Matze's story about him being the free speech advocate is entirely inaccurate? You doubt me? Go back and look at some of Mr. Matze's own interviews. Maybe you'll understand why we had a problem with him. His own words. Just go look at some of his interviews with the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere. His own words, not mine. His own words. He's quoted. Look at some of his own words. And you tell me again who was the real advocate for free speech. Not asking you to do it. I have nothing personal against Mr. Matze. As a matter of fact, why do I feel betrayed? You know, when they went after John and his wife for being Russian, just for being Russian, John is his spouse is Russian. This is the United States. It doesn't matter where your spouse is from. Your spouse is not a criminal or some foreign agent acting nefariously. Then she has the absolute right to be treated like a dignified human being like anyone else. And when they went after John's wife and tried, the liberals that is, because he was associated with Parler at one point, and tried to create some nonsense Russian conspiracy about us, which was absurd, which was laughable on its face. It was worse than the PP tape. Who defended him on my show? Yeah, me. Who else defended him? The entire leadership team of Parler, where if you go to parler.com now, there's a landing page up, not a fully functional site. We will be back. You'll see the entire Parler team defend John Matze. So we defended him. And when it came for time for John to defend us and tell the truth, John decided to spin a fairy tale about why he was let go. So you may be asking right now, especially if you're a liberal reporter looking to attack me and Parler, because that's what you do. You're not looking for the truth. But for actual reporters, you may be asking, okay, so what happened? You haven't gotten to that yet. Yeah, that's fine. Fair enough. I had to set it up. I'm going to give you a handy dandy media guide here for actual reporters on how to fix this. That's coming up. Let me just get to my second sponsor today for the show. Then I'll provide you the questions maybe you should ask so you have the full story, because the facts matter. disappointing. Listen, I don't know about you, but I feel like... So here's a handy media guide for actual reporters out there interested in doing their homework and not accepting at hand John Matze's story that he was some free speech advocate and wanted product stability. Really? Here's a few questions I would ask. Well, Mr. John, what exactly was your so-called free speech vision? Because you've changed your story now twice. On Wednesday, you said you were an advocate for light moderation and free speech, and that was the resistance you were meeting. Yeah, really? From who? Because the record the company has doesn't exactly say that. And then Thursday, you said you were an advocate for more moderation to get rid of those QAnon folks or whatever. It's interesting. Your story seems different. So what was it? What exactly was your free speech vision? Can you clear that up? What companies were you recommending to moderate the platform? Who recommended them to you? Who stopped you from implementing some of those companies that wanted heavy Twitter-like moderation? Who stopped you from doing that? These are just questions, I'd ask. Let's see how he answers. And remember, that'll all become record later on. So I would strongly caution you to press him on those answers and what evidence he actually has. Again, I'm sorry these internal fights had happened. They were not brought on by me. I'd ask him another question. If there were accounts being deleted at Parler, well, who was doing it? Wasn't Dan Bongino, was it? I'd ask that question. Who was that? Who was deleting accounts there? What happened there? You're free speech guy, right? You said that on Wednesday, although you changed your story on Thursday. Who was doing that? Can you actually provide some evidence? I mean, you're making a lot of allegations here that you were some free speech advocate. Were you really? Or was it the other owners who were free speech advocates? Because there's a pretty clear record, I'd ask him again, make any money from Parler? CEO should have been paid, right? How much did I make? Just asking. Legitimate questions, right? I'd ask him another question, too, because he says he was all for product stability. He was. I would ask this if I was in the media. I'd say, well, whose decision ultimately was it to go with some of the providers that canceled us later? Whose decision was that? Who was it in the company who was warning that doing business with left-leaning companies like Amazon was a bad idea? Who was it exactly who was warning against that? You were all for product stability. Really? You weren't warned about that? Are you sure? I'm just asking questions, right? The truth will come out, right? If you're not afraid of it, if you're not afraid to ask real questions of John. Remember, this will all be on the record later. Who was it who warned repeatedly that doing business with left-leaning companies was a really bad idea? Who was that exactly? Just remember, whatever interview you give is public record. You can answer that. Someone's willing to ask. Whose decision was that? You weren't warned repeatedly? Weren't asked for a plan B? You sure about that? The board, folks. I'm an investor in Parler. I don't have the power to terminate anyone from the company. But if you're asking me personally and as an investor, do I support the decision? Abso-freaking-lutely. Because I've never steered you wrong. And we built something, finally. And every company, as my wife said this morning, the biggest companies in the world have always had some turmoil in the beginning. There's division issues. This is not new to Parler, and no one should get lost in this and say, oh my gosh, this is too much turmoil, Parler, whatever. Every company has issues, every company. But the vision issue, or what they call in business school, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal of the company, that vision should never, ever change. The vision of what you're doing for the company should never change. We were a free speech alternative to Twitter and the first one to really blow through and get some real solid backing, 20 million plus users. And we were brutally attacked, and this infighting is a waste of time, and it was not my call. But I'm not going to let anyone lie about this company, and I'm not going to let anyone get us off this freedom train. We are rolling in the right direction towards a parallel economy that works. And I'm not going to let John or anyone else stop it. I worked tirelessly for a year on this company for not $1. I don't expect anyone out there. Don't cry for me, Argentina, all right? That's not what this is about. It's about the truth. Others got paid to do this. I didn't, because I believed in this vision and building this. And I don't want it sidetracked. And I'm hoping today is the last time I have to address this ridiculosity. The vision for the company was ours, mine and the two other owners. Ours. The record is crystal clear that we wanted a free speech platform that always did our best to preserve our vision there, that you could go there free of political censorship. All right. Speaking of which, you know what?
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos just like this, leave a comment below, like it, share it, hit that subscription button. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. This is what's next. I'm Jazz Broganzo, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.